So I will go for an introduction to social media for sustainability groups. Yeah, as I said, this will be quite a brief introduction. It'll be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. I'm going to start at the very base level. And what I have done is I've prepared a list of resources that you can find. So I won't go into like excruciating detail on how to do everything, but I will send out that list of resources to everyone afterwards. So you can then find, there'll be lots of step-by-step instructions on there, so you can use that. So the structure of the evening, I'm going to do a little introduction to using social media, why you might want to use it, what to bear in mind. I'll do a little explanation of some social media sites, how to use them. Then I'll give you some tools, some tips for easier use, and then we'll have a bit of time for questions and discussion at the end. So our first question, why use social media for your sustainability group? So the main thing is keeping your group members or your community members up to date with all your activities and work. So it's a really good place where you can say, we've got this event coming up, we've done this event, we're planning something, we're applying for funding for something. You can really keep people up to date, let them know what's going on, and help people find things that they might like to attend. The second one, raising funds. Somebody actually mentioned that in my survey that I sent out that a few of you helpfully filled in. That's very kind. The fundraising is a really good thing you could do via this. You can send links out to your fundraising sites. Facebook actually has an option for fundraising through it, which I have not used before, but something you may wish to explore. Building your membership. If you're present, visible, people can find you, you look active, you look friendly, they're much more likely to want to come along, and they're much more likely to be able to come along because you're actually putting the information out there that lets them do that. Next one is educating and informing. It is a good place to put out information. It's a good place to put out information in particular, I think, about things that are going on locally, things people might want to get involved in, schemes that might be relevant to people, but you may also be interested in educating on climate change, biodiversity, lots of nature topics. That might be something you're interested in using social media for. And the final one is sort of an all of the above topic, which is visibility. Basically, you're saying, we're here, we're doing stuff, we're active, come and join in. It's making sure that when people search for your town or your village or your area, or search for your group, that they can actually find you and see that you are active and doing something. So what to keep in mind, thinking about your end goal. It's really easy, I think, particularly with stuff like social media and communication, to kind of go in at the start and just go, oh, we'll make this and we'll do this and we'll run this. And that's fine, it's all fun, but it's quite useful, I think, to bear in mind what you actually want to achieve with using it. So who is your target audience? For most of you guys, it's probably either people already in your group or people in your community or people in the sort of wider community of associated groups and organizations. What do you want them to know? So like when they read your post or see your picture, what do you want them to take away from that? And what do you want them to do? Maybe you want them to go to your website. Maybe you want them to join you at an event. There are quite a few options, but it's worth bearing in mind every time you're thinking about setting up a social media account, running your social media, doing anything with social media. What do you want people to know? And what do you want them to do? So our first one is Facebook. This one is probably the one that most of you are most likely to be using or wanting to use. So there's a few pros to Facebook. From my perspective, it's probably the most popular for a lot of your target audiences. It's pretty popular amongst people over 40. It's quite popular amongst people who are involved in community stuff, environment stuff. It's quite useful for that audience. It's also really easy to share events, news stories, other quick updates. It's quite obvious the way to do that. It's just text posts, there's event posts, there's different ways to use it, but it's quite easy. And you can choose to operate as a group or a page depending on what your needs are. And I'll come back to that in a sec. The possible cons of Facebook, there's frequent changes to the site and how it operates, and it can make it a bit tricky to use. I'll mention a bit about that later on, but basically it can be tricky. And what I want to emphasize is you should enjoy playing with it, experimenting it, have a go at it. But if you feel like, oh, this is really tough, I'm not sure what I'm doing, this feels really unintuitive, know that it's not just you. A lot of people, including social media professionals, find Facebook difficult to use sometimes. It's not always really user-friendly. Another con is the declining user base. It is dropping off a bit, particularly amongst people under 40. That might not be a problem for you. That might be totally fine, but it's worth being aware of. I mean, it can be a bit overwhelming as a user. Sometimes you can go on there, there's a lot of information coming at you, particularly if you're a member of a lot of groups. So you might find that people find it a little bit difficult to use or to use regularly. So if you're using Facebook, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a personal account. You have to have your own account to access Facebook in order to set up a group or a page. You can choose to set really tight privacy settings on your personal account. So you can choose to hide all of your activities, you know, all your personal details, all of that stuff. But you do have to have some kind of personal account in order to then create a group or page. I've had a lot of people ask me if you can create a fake profile, and the answer is kind of yes, kind of no. I've definitely worked for organizations where they'd created a fake profile and it worked, but Facebook is set up to try to stop people from doing that. So if it clocks some unusual activity or it doesn't buy into your fake persona on Facebook, you could be blocked or kicked off. And that leads me to the last point, which is to always have more than one person with full access to your group or page. You don't want to have one person be kicked off and then lose access entirely. So it's always worth making sure you've got a couple of people who have access to your page, and that goes across all these social media profiles, really. Group or page is a big question, and there's not a huge amount of difference between them for the purposes that most of you will be using them. But essentially, groups allow for a little bit more connection and discussion. So anyone can post onto them, anyone can have conversations on there, post their own link or opinion. And your post will appear on a group as coming from you. So I've used an example over on the right-hand side here of Tony, who is one of our SUS-SH members, and this is from his group, the Smash group. You can see that it shows a little icon under his name, which shows he's the founder, but it is coming from him. Whereas a page allows quite easy information sharing. So it's really about disseminating information, putting information out there. It's not as easy for people to actively post onto your page. They can send stuff to you, but they can't post and it show up. But you can share on a page as your organization. So that can be quite beneficial if you want to appear as maybe a little bit more professional, or that your posts are very representative of your organization. So you can see at the bottom there that this one is Sustainable South Hams. It's coming from Sustainable South Hams. You might notice if you are an admin of a page that it does show a little name underneath, but that's just something the admins can see. They can see which of the other admins has posted it. What can you share on Facebook? You can share text posts with images or videos. You can tag in other organizations, so you can link to them and they'll see that you tagged them in. You can also link to web pages. So the little image I've included here of our social media post on the Sustainable South Hams page, it gives you a preview automatically. So you don't have to create that. It will automatically draw from the web page and put something on there for you. You can also make event pages, so people can say they're coming to the event and then get reminders about it, and you can have an area essentially exclusively dedicated to that event where you can just post information about the event. You can also create stories, which are posts that appear for a very short time, and I'll probably talk a bit more about that concept when we come to talk about Instagram. But they are there and they're something people can just flick through, so they might be an easy way to get to people. And you can also share posts from other groups or pages. So you can, if you see something else valuable, you can just click share that either as it is or with a comment. And that just, allows you to work with other groups, to share information, to share useful things, to encourage people to go to other events. It's a nice way to interact with other groups. The next one up is Instagram. So pros of Instagram, I found it to be quite popular amongst environmental groups, environmental people, nature groups, nature people, that sort of section of society are quite present on Instagram. It's relatively easy to use and it doesn't require you to have a personal account. And it's a nice way to quickly show who you are and what you're doing. So people can go to your Instagram page. There's a little gallery of photos, of images. It's a really quick way to show, you know, we're here, we're doing stuff, we have a nice time, whatever it is you want to say to your audience. There are a few cons to Instagram. There's currently no way to link in posts. So when you post on Instagram, it's a little picture and some text. There's currently no way to add a link there, but I will come back to that later. It can require a little bit of work to create good images and videos, although not necessarily. You can just post a picture as it is, and that's quite easy. And it can sometimes be a bit tricky to see what the people you follow are sharing. Instagram has recently changed their format so that when you're on your feed, which shows you everything people are sharing, it pushes stuff that it thinks you'll be interested in, which you're usually not. What you can do is go to the top left of your Instagram and click a little arrow there, and it will offer the option of clicking following, and then you can just see the posts from people you're following. It's a bit annoying that you have to do that extra step, but it is possible. So if you're using Instagram and you want to get it set up, you can create an account using your organization name, information, and logo. The login details can be shared. That can be quite useful. So you don't have to have lots of people logging in separately. You just have your one login for your one Instagram page. You can switch it to a professional account under settings. I've put a little link to some information about that in my resources document. Again, it's probably not something that will necessarily be relevant to a lot of you, but you can have a look at that and see whether that might apply to you or be useful. You can also follow accounts you're interested in and then get posting. So you can follow the big national charities, you can follow the other people around you, you can follow people who you think are sharing interesting stuff, and then you can get posting your own stuff, or you can share theirs, which I'll explain in a sec. I would note with Instagram, you're probably best off using the phone app. It's a little bit easier and you get the full functions. You can use it on a computer, but it's not, you don't get every single function and it's not quite as easy. So ways to use Instagram: you can make a post, which is an image, a series of images, or a video with this text caption. When you put it up, Instagram will guide you through getting it the right size, putting filters or photo editing it, and then you can tag other accounts in the image as well. You can see down below here, this is my post about this evening's event. And you can see at the bottom of my little text thing, it's quite small, but it does say book now at the link in bio. So I will come back to that because that is, as I said, you can't put an actual link there, but there is a way around it. There are other ways to use Instagram. You can create a story, which is a post that lasts about, I think, 24 hours. So it's a really quick way to share a photo. If you're in an event and you just want to take a quick photo and share it there, you can do that. Or you can share a post that you've previously made, and you can add features. You can add a website link that people can click on. You can add tags. You can see in the one on the right, I've tagged in the West Country Rivers Trust. And you can tag in nice little graphics. The one on the right doesn't say boo, it says book now, but it was animated so that it flashes at you when you look at it, which is fun. It makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more friendly, not so corporate. You can also collect stories under highlights. So I have a highlight on our Sustainable South Hams Instagram page that collects together upcoming events. And so that holds it there. They'll last longer than 24 hours. And you can just click through it and see what events are upcoming. So if you, for example, maybe have like a composting project, every time you put up a story about composting, you can save it in that highlight. And then you can say to people, oh, if you'd like to find out more about our composting, you can check out our compost highlight. I think it's a really nice way to use it. And I actually think a lot of people who are looking at Instagram are more likely to skim through stories than they are to actually scroll through all the feeds. So I think it's quite a good way to get information out there. I've also added a little bit down here about reels, which are phone screen size, so portrait videos up to 90 seconds long, often featuring filters or audio, and they're more likely to be favored by Instagram's algorithm. Instagram is sort of pushing towards being a bit more of a video platform. I don't currently make Reels particularly, but if you are somebody who likes the idea of doing videos, or you'd like to start doing videos, or you'd like to have a go at that, Instagram is definitely sort of pro that and has a lot of resources about creating Reels. A really quick note about Meta. You really don't need to know this particularly, but it's maybe useful to give a little bit of context. Meta is Facebook's parent company. It includes Instagram, it includes WhatsApp, and it includes Facebook. It's trying to sort of integrate those platforms. So when you'll use them, you'll find it saying, would you like to link an Instagram? Would you like to link WhatsApp? Which can be really useful. They also seem to be encouraging Facebook page users to use something called their business suite. It's quite a new rollout. It's likely to change and evolve. I have been fighting with it this week, personally, with our own Facebook page, and it is a bit complex. And again, I'm just sort of pointing this out to say, if you occasionally find this stuff tricky or complicated, I found lots of posts online by social media professionals saying, help, what's that about? I don't know what I'm doing here. So it's okay, it's not you, it's Facebook. And they do want people to use it, and they do want people to post on it. So it is largely not big, not scary, but if you do come across problems, know that it is very likely not you, it's Facebook. It's doing its thing. So a really quick one about LinkedIn. As I know, there was someone who had mentioned wanting to be on LinkedIn. It's really good for connecting to professional organizations you're working with. So if you're working a lot with like the Wildlife Trust, Woodland Trust, stuff like that, it might be a really good way to say, oh, hi, we're here. It creates quite a professional presence online. So if someone searches you, you're on LinkedIn, you have your profile built up on there. I think that looks quite professional. It might be the vibe you want to give across. And it allows volunteers or employees to link to their work with your group, which I think is a really nice, valuable thing to offer, actually, is to say, look, we're a proper organization, and you can say, I did proper work with this proper organization. And I think that's quite nice. Cons of LinkedIn for you. It's difficult to build followers and community, really. It's not sort of set up so much for groups to exist or to communicate with each other. It's definitely more set up for people to personally build their kind of professional presence online. So it's probably not necessary for a lot of smaller groups. If you want it, it's pretty easy to manage and run. So if you think, oh, I'd quite like it, actually, go for it. But I don't think it's necessarily needed for you. As with Facebook, you need a personal account on LinkedIn in order to then create or manage a group. So getting set up on LinkedIn, you create a personal account under your own name, and then you just set up a page for your organization and assign admins. That sounds like I'm skimming past a lot of stuff, but it's pretty easy. It really is just sort of a name of organization. What do you do? Add a little description, add some photos. And the posting is generally quite similar to Facebook. So it's text and images or a video and links that automatically generate a preview of the website that you're sending people to. Twitter, quickly. Pros for Twitter is it can be good for directly connecting with other groups, people, campaigns. You can do these very quick casual updates. You can say, oh, we're doing this thing, we're doing that thing. You can also have space for these conversations, these longer threads. You can connect directly with, you know, the group the next town over, but also with like George Monbiot or someone like that. There's a lot of space to have conversations and interconnect with people. Cons of Twitter, the biggest one for me is nobody's quite sure what's happening with it. You probably have heard some of this at least, but last year, towards the end of last year, it was bought by Elon Musk. A lot of people resigned, a lot of people were fired or for other reasons left the organization. A lot of the ways it worked changed a bit, and a lot of people who had been banned were allowed back in again. So there's a little bit of a like, ooh, what's happening here? And I'm currently personally waiting to see how it all sort of pans out before I start putting us onto Twitter. It can be quite difficult to find relevant information or to be found by others. It's such a huge amount of information going on in there that, yeah, it can be quite easy for your posts to be missed or for you to miss stuff that you think would be relevant to you. And I have put this point, it's not necessarily true for all situations and everyone, but it can be quite a confrontational space. There are, you know, people who are sort of on there really to have an argument, and that can be very frustrating or upsetting if you're, you know, on the receiving end of those sort of people. But if you do decide to go on Twitter, it's quite easy to get set up. Again, as with Instagram, you can just create an account for your organization. You don't have to have a personal account on there. You can add a little website link in your information box. Posts are limited to 280 characters, which is sort of the selling point of Twitter, but you can include photos, videos, and you can tag in other accounts. You can add website links. So it's quite a nice, neat little way to just sort of go, here's something, off it goes. You can share other people's tweets with your own comment, or you can link a series of tweets together to make a Twitter thread. And that's quite a nice way to sort of follow stuff up or come back to things or create a nice long sort of story that people can follow. So a few other possibilities. I'm not going to go into depth on these, but I'm just going to throw them out there in case any of them spark something in your brain and you go, actually, that sounds really good for me. So some more social media. TikTok is an entirely video-based social media platform. It's very popular with Gen Z, which is, I think, 26-year-olds and below now. But it seems to be really tricky to control who sees your content. You can't really connect with people in the way you can on other social media platforms. So it's definitely sort of throwing information out there and hoping some people see it. So it might not be quite right for community groups, I suspect. Mastodon, you might have heard talked about in the context of Twitter's sort of collapse. It's an open source software that allows users to build, run, and moderate their own servers. So basically they can create their own little internet space where discussions can take place. So that could be really nice for community building. I would strongly suggest, if you're interested in either of those, probably to create your own personal account, go on, have a look, see what it feels like, see what people are doing on there, and then maybe you can get a feel for whether or not that's somewhere that it's useful for you to have an actual sort of organizational presence. Other ways to connect outside of typical social media. WhatsApp, probably quite a few of you might be using. It's a very popular messaging app. It can be really useful for, you know, updating people saying, oh, we're meeting at this time. But it can become quite busy or overwhelming. I know quite a lot of people who are on loads of WhatsApp groups with loads of people in them, and they've had to mute most of them because it just becomes too much. So I would suggest you keep those to maybe smaller groups or subgroups of your organization. I've also noted Telegram or Signal, which are alternative messaging platforms. And I believe the reason people use those in particular at the moment is because WhatsApp is owned by Facebook, and there's a feeling that Telegram or Signal are maybe a little bit more private and secure. MailChimp may or may not be relevant to you, but it's a newsletter creation website. It allows you to store all of your contacts, your email contacts, and send everything out to them very easily. We use it for our newsletters, so it might be something where if you're wanting to email contact people a lot, that might be worth looking into. YouTube, I'm sure you'll have heard of. It's a video sharing website. And if you do happen to have a lot of videos of, say, talks or events or longer videos, it's a really good place to just keep those videos, and then you can link to the YouTube page on your other social media platforms. YouTube, by the way, is linked to your Google account, so you may wish to create a Google account for your organization and then use the YouTube links to that. A third other possibilities is other places for groups to communicate and coordinate. So one of the things that Facebook groups, particularly the private groups, are often used for is just for your group, not reaching out, but just for your group to share stuff, to organize things, to discuss things. So I've put a few different options here that you might want to look into. Slack is a program that was originally created for the workplace. It's sort of similar to Microsoft Teams, if any of you have used that. It allows groups to discuss different topics easily. So if you've got a few different subgroups or things like that, you can separate them out and have their own discussion place. Discord is a chat app that works quite similarly to Slack. So again, you can have your different channels to discuss different topics. And Google Groups allows users to communicate via email or an online group space. We currently are running quite a few Google Groups that I'll advertise here. We have an energy one, a compost one for parish and town councillors, one for rivers and land. Any others, Jane? No? Jane can put the link to ours in there, in the chat there. They're quite a nice way because you can just, it works through your email. So you receive emails, you can respond to emails. That's quite a nice way to communicate with people and to let people communicate with each other. So I'm going to run through very quickly a few tools that might help you use social media, because this is a lot. Like, I understand it's quite overwhelming. There's a lot of information. There's a lot of options. And also it can feel like this is a massive time commitment. You know, oh, I've got to go to here and post, and I've got to go to here and post. And I've got, how's all that going to work? So I've got a few tools to help you use social media, some social media management tools, a little bit about images, image creation, where you're going to get those from, and then one point about links. So social media management tools let you plan, schedule, and organize your social media posts and see how they're performing. So you have all your social media in one place, which you can log into that one place rather than logging into the separate ones. So a few different people can have that login information. You can plan out your social media in advance. So you could decide, we're going to do a post like this every single week, or we've got an event coming up, so we're going to post 2 weeks in advance, 3 days in advance, and 5 hours before. And you can schedule all of those posts ready to go, got them out of your head. And you can save time by doing all your posts in one go. You don't have to go to each of the separate social media places and post there separately. You can just do one post, tweak it to make it right for each social media, and then send it out, and you're done. The two that I come across most are Buffer and Hootsuite. I've put a list on the resources document, which has loads of different ones you can use, but Buffer and Hootsuite are quite commonly ones, and they offer free plans. So we currently use Buffer. I've just put it here so you can get an idea of what that looks like. So you can see on the left-hand side, I've got my LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram channels. So I've added those in. And then in the middle, you can see a calendar, and it shows that I've posted on Tuesday the 17th. And you can see I created one post and then shared that same post on both Facebook and Instagram at the same time. So that saves time. It's fairly easy to use. I'd say it's pretty user-friendly. And I've included in the document a little bit of a sort of user guide to those. And it definitely helps you see all in one place. Okay, so we've posted there, but we've got a whole week where we haven't got any posts. What are we going to put in there? So that's a really nice way to manage your social media, to save a bit of time, to take a bit of the stress away. And you can also use these for analytics. That's maybe not something you necessarily want, but it is quite interesting to go on and say, oh, actually that post, loads of people saw it, loads of people shared it. This post, nobody saw it at all, and see if you can work out what the difference is, whether there's something you could improve or change about the way you're posting, you know, to get out there a bit more effectively. But again, that might be a bit unnecessary for you, and you might just benefit from being able to save a bit of time in posting. Images. If you're looking to find images, it's really helpful to have strong, fun, relevant images. It catches people's eye. It feels clean and professional. It helps to gauge engagement. Using your own images is fantastic. So if you've taken a photo at an event or a meeting or whatever, or even if you've got a really nice photo of a flower that you think would be relevant, that's perfect. So that would be really good. And then the other option is that you can find royalty-free images and videos on sites like Unsplash, Pixabay, and Pexels. Again, I've linked all of this in the resources document. Unsplash and Pexels have lots of very nice aesthetic pictures and videos. You want to be sort of careful that you're picking something that is still relevant and isn't too kind of moody and stylized, but there's some really lovely pictures. And then Pixabay is really useful for, it does have photos, but it also has illustrations and sort of drawings or icons, and that can be really nice for creating images or creating posters. I've put at the bottom, be careful with copyright. There's a sort of thing where sometimes people will go onto Google Images and they'll just find the first image, save it, use it. And the danger with that is that it could be a copyrighted image. You're hopefully not that likely to get called up on it as quite a small organization, but it is possible, and you really don't want to be dealing with that. So it's much easier if you know for sure that you're getting an image that either you own or that it's royalty free. Also, the other benefit of the royalty free ones is they're usually really nice and big, whereas the ones you get off Google Images are sometimes really tiny, and that's where you end up with these oddly stretched out pixelated images, which just isn't very appealing. Whoops, let's go back. So if you're going to edit images, don't worry, we're not going too far into it, but you can do basic edits like cropping, changing brightness, color on your phone or your computer, just on the provided editing stuff. Or on Instagram, when you're posting something, it'll offer you filters or adjustments to the photo. If you want to get the pictures the right size, I've included, again, a document on the resources document that says all of the sizes for social media for 2023. So the best size for a tweet, the best size for a Facebook post, and also the best size for, you know, your profile picture and your profile heading images. Pixlr is a free online Photoshop alternative for resizing pictures or making edits. So this is maybe if you're feeling a little bit more adventurous or you're someone who's already into that, that's really handy. And again, I've linked that and a document about how to use that on my resources document. The last thing with images is you might decide you want to create some images. You might want to create a little poster for an event. You might want to give people some facts, some information. One of the easiest ways to do it, and the way I generally do it, to either add text or other elements to a photo or to just create a little simple graphic like the ones that I put on our Instagram, is just using what I'm using here, which is Google Slides or PowerPoint. You can change the slide size, you can add little shapes, you can add text, you can change the font, you can add your images that you've got off Unsplash or Pixabay or wherever. That's a really easy way to do it, and you can just make it the right size using that document that I've included on the resources list. There's also something I'd like to point you to, if that is something you're doing a lot, is making posters or leaflets or images, is Canva. It offers you loads of templates for different projects. It is free, although it also has you can get the premium version for free if you prove you are a non-profit organization. So that might be worth looking into if that is something you'd really like to do. And I've included one down the bottom right here that just popped up, which is creating a collection of designs for social media. So basically you go on there, it says, do you want to make an Instagram post? Great. Which of these Instagram posts? If that's something where you end up spending ages on it or stressing out over it or meaning to do it and not getting around to it, Canva is an incredibly quick way to do it. Or what I usually do is I go on Canva, I scroll around, and then I sort of copy it on a slides document or a PowerPoint document, and that works fine for me. Links is my final tool that might be useful to you. So how to direct people elsewhere, particularly if you don't have a website, but also if you do have a website, you might want to signpost people to certain articles, to your newsletter, to your other social media, to event pages, all that kind of thing. And as I said, when I was talking about Instagram, you can't just put a link in the actual post itself. So people will often put link in bio, and in the bio, what they will put is a link to a landing page. So this lets you just put a list of links And then you can post that into your bio, your information section of your social media, wherever you want to put it, really. And it's quite handy to have to send out to people if you need it. There's a few different options, but I use something called Linktree. Again, I've referred to that in the document. It's really easy to set up. It's free. You can see on the right-hand side here, this is what ours comes up as when you click on our Linktree in our Instagram bio. And you can change the logo, change the colors, change those little icons. It's a really nice way to point people to stuff beyond just pointing them to a general website. And yeah, particularly if you don't have a website, but you do have places you'd like to direct people to, that's a really nice option. So finally, a few tips and tricks, and hopefully, you know, some of you might have further questions or ideas in a minute. But these are the main ones. So I'd had someone ask about hashtags. They are used across most social media, and they can help people find your content. I did look this up, and it turns out far fewer people are using hashtags to actually search for content nowadays. It's not really how people are finding stuff, but the algorithm, as in what dictates what Instagram or Twitter or Facebook shows to you or shows to your audience, does still use their hashtags. So they are useful, but you want to be thoughtful about how you're using them. You can look up hashtags. You can look up whether they're common. They'll often show you, oh, you know, 30,000 posts have used this hashtag. Or you can, Google them, see if they come across as a common one or if they're linked to a certain thing. Or you could decide to have a hashtag that you use for yourself or for a specific event. That might be a useful way to do it as well. I would suggest you limit your use of them to about 3. That's the sort of general rule. There's nothing stopping you using loads. It's your social media, but that seems to be quite a good limit. And consider carefully what you're using. I've put e.g. hashtag climate change here, which might seem odd, but my previous job, I worked for a research laboratory. It was a marine environmental research laboratory. And I stopped using hashtag climate change because every time I used it, particularly on Facebook, it invited a lot of people with a lot of strong opinions about climate change. And they were generally climate change deniers. And we decided as an organization, we weren't going to do that. We weren't going to debate this subject over and over again. So actually, I stopped using the hashtag climate change. That might be something that you think, no, of course you should be engaging those people. Go for it. But yeah, just worth thinking about, who do you want to see this? How do you want people to find it? Who might be looking for that algorithm, for that hashtag? The second tip is to consider ways to connect with your local community. The biggest way I would say is if you have a local community Facebook page and it's quite active, you can post stuff on there, not just saying, oh, we have a Facebook page, by the way, but sharing stuff onto it saying, oh, we've got an event coming up. We've got this coming up. You're raising awareness of yourself. And it's also worth considering if there's other places you could signpost your social media on. So if you're putting up posters, can you signpost that you have a Facebook page? Or on emails you send out, could you put in the bottom of your emails that you have an Instagram page or, you know, something like that? See if you can build up amongst your local community, and also see if you can connect to other groups who you're already in contact with. You know, could they share it? Could they encourage it? Could they share your posts? A third tip is amplification, not duplication. You might feel that you really want to tell people about climate, about biodiversity, about the environment, whatever it is that your big passionate subject is. There are lots of organizations who are already producing and paying people to produce some really fantastic climate, environment, social media content. You don't necessarily have to do the work. If you have a real passion for it and you're like, no, I want to go out there and educate people and tell people stuff, fantastic. But the other option is that you follow a few different people who are creating some stuff already that's really interesting, engaging content, and then you share that yourself. share it appropriately, as in actually click share rather than screenshotting it or copying it. And do credit them. You know, it's nice. That's a good way to build a network anyways, to say, look at this amazing graphic from so-and-so. And finally, I'm going to finish up sort of where I started, which is keep your end goal in mind and try not to overwhelm your audience. It's worth remembering, and I think kind of weirdly easy to forget, how emotional a lot of these topics can be, how many big feelings people have wrapped up in it. You don't want to bombard people with what feels like bad news. They're probably aware of a lot of this stuff anyway. You know, if you've got a real urge in you to constantly post like Guardian articles about climate change, that's fantastic, but I would suggest saving that for your personal social media. Positive messaging is probably the best way to get people involved and engaged. It's not naivety or ignoring the problem, but it is being thoughtful about how best to communicate with people and how best to get people engaged with what you're doing and to perhaps, hopefully, get involved themselves.